Hello and welcome to FG Mania. In games, movies or novels, villains plays a role not inferior to the protagonist. The more evil, malicious, the more the protagonist has a place to act and shine. There are countless videos about main roles, so why don't we talk about villains today? More specifically, I will tell you about top villains that will make you both obsessive and interested. If you are a nearly 40 or in mid of 30 years old, and you are asked which villain you love the most, I think that 9 out of 10 you won't know how to answer. The love of the villains sounds a bit strange at the dawn of the gaming industry. It is easy to understand, because in the old days, gamers were not interested in learning deeply into the inner and hidden sides of villains. Villains' job is to appear in a dark scene, utter cliché threats and laughter, and then lying on the ground after being defeated by the protagonist. That's why it's so pathetic that no one has enough interest to find out what those bunches are thinking about, because the game will end after all. Time flies, as fast as a blink of an eye. The taste of the mass is increasingly high, causing content making people to invest more gray matter. Even for heroes, now fans have different perspectives, not just being a hero. In movies we see quite a few specific examples. Viewers are now bored with good heroes. Those are always true. Whether you blow up a mall or put the whole city in danger, civilians can't judge you. From the public's frustration, anti-hero began to appear. In video games, the grumpiness of gamers is increasingly high, which entails developers having to upgrade the quality. In addition to graphics and gameplay, the plot is of course the most interested part. People are no longer so easygoing that they're willing to watch a guy like Duke Nukem shoots like Rambo, then applaud like he did in the early 90s. The protagonist must now be dark, deep, must have depth and motives that sometimes you have to play until the end to understand. As an inevitable, the protagonist is carefully constructed, so is the villain. Maybe you think the whole story keeps focusing for the lead role, as long as it's good. If you have that thought, you are wrong. Just take a look at Necron from Final Fantasy IX, or Zoran Lazarevich from Uncharted 2, you will see immediately. The former has an unclear motive. The boring argument is that if you want to go home, you have to defeat it. Who knows why I have to beat the guy who just stood still like this statue? Not to mention that the promotion adds extremely temptractive shapes and moves. What about Zoran Lazarevich? Famous for his long speech along with many tactical mistakes, Uncharted 2 does not bring anxiety, fear or drama to the players. Clearly a bad villain role, built through speakers with outdated formulas, can become the grave of any game. One is blandly evil, one is too cruel. The devs portray personality too real, making many gamers unforgettable, even feeling scared and obsessed. An actor once said, "Playing the role for people to hate is difficult, playing the evil role that people like is even harder." Right. Because although the sales are not high, the games with monstrous villains bring a sense of fear, dangerous, to the point of obsession even when the game is completed, which will surely make people remember forever. Let's take a look at those villains with us. And please note that the list is just my favorite. Dylan Fuentes, from Dead Rising 3. Firstly, we will start with a very interesting character. The sick psychopath Dylan Fuentes in Dead Rising 3. Most of the bosses of the third game in the Dead Rising series are built on the sins according to the Christian conception. These are pride, sloth, gluttony, envy, wrath, greed, lust. In which Dylan Fuentes represents evil lust and stands out above the rest of the sins. Therefore, both the shapes and the weapons Dylan uses are wild and letharmed, symbolizing all the deep desires of humanity. In terms of appearance, he wears like a stripper in pole dancing and wears the mask as Ken Kaneki in Tokyo Ghoul. Regarding weapons, we bow to those who has the idea of giving Dylan a flamethrower but looks like a penis. And 2 fuel cans look exactly like 2 dangling dumbbells. While the other psychopaths of Dead Rising 3 are screaming something about zombies, this guy invites his opponents to sext or doing porns with extremely obscene style. Through that mess, players can recognize many horrors such as Dylan Fuentes has gender problems and sick sexual orientation. He is also abused by his own father. Don't get me wrong, there's no sympathy here because everyone has their problems. But that's no reason to be a monster even more disgusting than the zombies. Apparently this guy also suffers from personality disorders and has many failures in life, which leads to him tending to compensate for his weak mind, by creating sexual scenarios in which Dylan Fuentes is the one who dominates and controls others. Before the protagonist enters the boss match, he says, "Baby, if you don't listen, then you're going to be a very violent sugar daddy." We're so done with this dude. Needles Kane from Sweet Tooth, Twisted Metal. Clowns are popular characters, appearing in many parks, circuses and cultural publications such as comics, movies and video games. This character has playfulness, humor, always brings joy to life. However, there is a strange syndrome in the world that makes some obsessed with happy clowns. People with this syndrome have a deep obsession with the face of the clown. On a mild level, the person will feel insecure. In more severe cases, they will have extreme reactions such as crying, fainting, when seeing the faces of clowns. For example, in the case of the protagonist in Zombieland, he has a set of extreme survival rules to survive in the post-atopic days except for one fatal weakness, its clown fear. Fortunately, under the power of beautiful girls, I mean the power of divine love, finally overcomes that fear to become a hero. Of course, the directors are not foolish to ignore the opportunity to fully exploit that factor. What is more attractive than something that scares and fascinates people at the same time? If in the film industry, we have Pennywise, it is too famous, the gaming field does not succumb to inferiority. From names that are quite unfamiliar to the mass such as Jackson de Box from Snacks and Jackson, to more familiar are Kefka Palazzo from Final Fantasy VI and finally, the Gotham crime prince that everyone must know whether to play games or watch movies or not. It can be said that obsessive clowns have become an integral part of mass culture. However, today the character that we find out is not the above but it's Needles Kane or Sweet Tooth. The crazy clown in the racing game that shoots more than races called Twisted Metal. Twisted Metal is basically considered an early battle royale game. But by comparison, the level of hysteria, the shooting racing in Twisted Metal completely beats every game after that. Newbies who have just practiced playing despite getting good guns, but all running around looking for hiding places in so coward, they can't be compared with guys that have cars like monsters, installing both 6-barrel guns in missiles trying to blow up your head. Realistic shooting racing has never been a sport aimed at enhancing solidarity. It has everything from violence, luck, recklessness and imbalance. We are wondering how the naked dude with 2 wheels attached to the sides had enough confidence, when he punched each other with a bunch of armored supercars from head to toe, and some even carried tanks and flying sticks together. What a horrifying bravery. Despite the obvious imbalances and biases between opponents, shooting racing still creates a classic sport to those who have played this game on the PlayStation. The game is the perfect thing to solo with friends when everyone is trying to choose a good car, then go pick up rockets to shoot all the targets on the map. Twisted Metal was also the inspiration for many later films and successor titles, the most famous was Rocket League. And it's not fictional when it comes to Twisted Metal that people will immediately think of Needles Kane. In the original version, he was a normal ice cream seller with a happy family. One day, his mind was infiltrated by evil forces. He went crazy killing the whole family, except for his daughter, Sophie, who managed to stab him in the eye with scissors and fled. From there he vowed to find and kill his daughter. Following Needles Kane's relentless series of slaughter and destruction, it's the perfect opening story for a crazy murderous clown that makes everyone obsessed. Can be described as a slightly different past in each version, but Needles Kane is always the voice of hatred, madness, anger and passion for destroying everything. Few characters have such a desire to maintain their cruel egos. According to the plot of Twisted Metal, Black, Needles Kane is a serial killer who terrors the residents of Midtown. After he was sentenced to death by electric chair, a priest will come to pray for his soul to rest. However, overwhelmed by his cruel actions, during his execution, instead of blessing him, he cursed that Needles Kane's soul would forever burn in hell. Thanks to that, he not only didn't die, but was revived as a half-demon and the head was always on fire. With no way to kill him, they were forced to move Needles Kane to Blackfield Asylum. There, while the pain from the curse burns in his mind, he is invited by Calypso to participate in Twisted Metal's death race, with the reward that the curse will be lifted. Not interested in that fascinating invitation, the crazy clown agrees to participate just to unleash devastation, killing without any obstacles. He even planned to kill Calypso to seize ownership of Twisted Metal and eventually succeeded with that plan. Sachiko Shinozaki. Weeba players are not strange with Corpse Party, a horror and adventure survival game series developed with RPG Maker software, first launched in 1996 for the PC 9801. With the success of the original game, in turn, reproductions as well as other follow-up products were constantly launched to expand the content of Heavenly Paradise. From Blood-Covered, Book of Shadows, Sweet Sachiko's Hysteric Birthday Bash, Blood Drive to Corpse Party 2, Dead Patient. All have turned this game into not really a blockbuster, but everyone knows. Corpse Party opens with a group of students at Kasaragi Academy including Ash, Naomi, Yoshiki, Ayumi, Seiko, Mayu, Sakutaro, decide to perform a friendship ritual called Sachiko Ever After because Mayu is about to transfer. The ritual was successful, but like many other school horror games, instead of raising friendships, it called out the demon named Sachiko Shinozaki to send them all to heaven. From here we know Kasaragi Academy was built on the land that was Heavenly Host Elementary School, which was demolished after witnessing many cases of staff and students missing, and mysteriously murdered in 1975. After the ritual is completed, Sachiko drags the group of students into the demonic space that haunts the Heavenly Way. And in this place, it begins to divide the group into different dimensions to gradually manipulate and kill each of them. Besides the characters performing the ritual of Kasaragi School, it is known that those outside performing the ritual are also caught up in this demonic space. Under the obsession of the ghosts of children dying, they begin to lose control. There are crazy acts such as killing each other or even cannibals. To escape this place, the group must satisfy the ghosts of the children while they discover the secrets that make up this space. Adding to Corpse Party a success, besides the storyline of both horror and brain-twisting with the level of horrific killing and dark plots. It's impossible not to mention the Japanese Guro specialty, a Japanese art school focused on describing and portraying monstrosity, unusual, distorted, scary. Common themes are death, killing, suicide, torture, cannibalism. In the game, one can discover that the characters can do different disgusting things even if we couldn't witness, like Yoshiki's eating his crush in Corpse Party. Blood-Covered Repeated Fear. In Chapter 2 Bad Ending 4, the protagonist Yoshiki discovers that Ayumi lies dead on the floor, her body being bitten and eaten by someone. In search of clues to this, Yoshiki is desperate to find a piece of paper confirming that he is Ayumi's predator. Of course, a horror game is impossible to lack a villain. Otherwise it is just a B-class product with cheap scares. In Corpse Party, the demon Sachiko Shinozaki with a naive holy form is the one same. Designed with the identity of a child, Sachiko has a normal physique, long black hair covering her face. She wore a ripped red dress that matched her gray complexion and red marks on her neck. As an unsympathetic rule of the Japanese horror series, the more lovely, harmless or trivial the truth behind it is, the more frightening, terrible, and Sachiko clearly meets all those conditions. It is unbelievable that Sachiko was once portrayed as an inner child, even quite shy, but things changed after the tragic death of his mother Yoshi. From the moment she became evil spirits, Sachiko began to show her uniqueness with a brutal interest in kidnapping, torturing, and killing victims. If we have ever experienced Corpse Party, Book of Shadows, we can see that Sachiko never wanted to finish off the victim quickly. He wants to entertain those miserable people, by pretending to be friends, or give the victim false hope of his ability to escape this evil place, and trample without pity. In a way, this is the same as a child would do with his toys, but in a very perverted and obsessive way. So all that Sachiko did was for entertainment purposes only? Not exactly that. According to our research, she just wanted to please her mother, Yoshi Shinozaki. She was a nurse at Heavenly School. She was a kind, caring and loved children. After being murdered by Principal Takamine Yanagihori after the unsuccessful rape, she wanted revenge and cursed the whole Yanagihori family. A few years later, unable to withstand negative emotions, the term in Corpse Party called darkening. She influenced Sachiko's soul and confessed her desire to have more children to befriend. The little demon fulfilled her wishes by killing numerous children, and then sending their souls to heaven to make friends with Yoshi. Later, however, Sachiko's wickedness and distortion in her soul became more apparent. We can see that it merely takes advantage of the ritual of tightening the Sachiko ever after friendship in search of new prey or toys. Despite being somewhat bleached in Blood Drive, Sachiko is just a poor soul who has lost her way when she wants to show her love to her mother, but after all she has done, it seems a bit difficult to sympathy. Overall, Sachiko is a complex villain with sadness in her short life. Some people also say that if they fall into the same situation as Sachiko, perhaps their minds twist as much as they do. However, as in the case of Dylan Fuentes, we still keep the opinion that unhappy circumstances in life are not an excuse for people to treat others cruelly. Basically, everyone has their own suffering. If they keep relying on the reason that I am so miserable I will be like this, then the society will become so chaos. Dr. Faustus, Thrill Kill. Basically, Thrill Kill will not be too familiar to mass gamers. The reason is simple: because this peculiar product has never been officially released, but only to gamers through free files shared on the internet. Born in the 1998s of the last century, Thrill Kill is a two-player fighting game released by Virgin Interactive, which was later acquired by EA, and of course the ownership of Thrill Kill also changed. Perhaps throughout his life specializing in devouring small studios and killing hit series, this was the only case where EA had a little effect on the community, as they prevented Thrill Kill from being widely released on the market. More precisely, the game was cancelled just 3 weeks before the official launch date. The reason is that the game is too anti-social and insults many factors such as religion, gender and high level of violence. For these reasons, EA has locked down all the social paths of Thrill Kill, sealed this game in stock, and banned every other third studio from having the opportunity to release it thanks to its ownership. However, the programmers who have spent their time creating Thrill Kill are not satisfied with the decision of the new boss, some of whom have sneaked Thrill Kill's source online, so that gamers can download it for free as well as experience its content. This decision later went down in history, when Thrill Kill was ranked among the most disgusting games of all time, testament to the sickness of mankind. So what does Thrill Kill contain after all to make EA drastically prohibit it from launching just 3 days before its release? First, this is a fighting game that allows 4 players at the same time. It also simulates the extreme violent fighting style of Mortal Kombat, with the finishing acts in the style of beheading bones or tearing opponents apart, so that gore splashes as much as possible. But if Mortal Kombat is only terrified by the most macabre fatality attacks, then Thrill Kill has been disgusting right from the design of characters, with the craziest cast of monsters ever appeared. The storyline is nothing complicated, mostly about a strange tournament, where stranded souls have to find a way to destroy each other, the reward being a resurrected ticket. The organizer of this disgusting tournament and also the last boss in the game named Maruka, a goddess that has nothing to do during the lockdown pandemic. Unwisely, this woman gathered the killers, perverts or unusual nerves and let them confront each other to death. I must say, it's too antithemic for these people to live again, let alone organize a tournament for them to compete with. All characters in Thrill Kill have 2 personalities. They are normal people, but through many events have awakened the evil nature in them, to become extremely dangerous criminals. The game reproduces something called evil character. By some definition, or it can be understood that everyone has hidden craziness, just that they haven't had the opportunity to unleash. In a sense, Thrillkill is pretty humane, but its way of expressing it is out of control. As you can see, Thrillkill's description does not comply with any logic at all. It's like developers come up with something cool that's immediately included regardless of whether they're in conflict with the whole thing or not. It can be said that all characters in Thrillkill in one way or another are scum of society. A bunch of deeds to the point of taking cannibalism as fun, or as Faustus, the doctor who is passionate for dissection, especially likes to peck the patient's abdomen but without anesthesia during surgery. Speaking of Dr. Faustus, with his boundless passion, of course, the number of patients who died on his operating table can only be determined as extremely positive. It's difficult to statistics how many exactly. In his official medical records, Faustus was on the blacklist for accidentally killing the patients 27 times. What is confusing here is that all cases are considered surgical failures, and he does not bear any criminal liability. Is it possible that even the authorities are afraid to get involved with the maniac who is a doctor, but prefers to kill people rather than save? As mentioned above, because of his passion for dissecting to madness, Faustus left no one, including himself. He even had surgery to attach a bear trap to his face in place of his jaw, and unlucky that he died after the surgery. Why do we say unlucky? Because after his death, Faustus is revived by the goddess to participate in the sick tournament in Thrillkill, and from there gamers will be long obsessed with him. This game clearly goes too far from the usual moral side, as it aims to kill innocent people, tolerate crimes, as well as give extreme villains a second chance to continue their sick behaviors. Eddie Gluskin, Outlast, Whistleblower. After the release of Outlast, Red Barrels continued to release the next DLC called Outlast, Whistleblower, to clarify the events that occurred before the main game, as well as a more thorough explanation of studies at psychiatric camp. Accordingly, Murkoff Company is the source of everything, led by Dr. Rudolf Wernicke, who built Morphogenic Engine, a server network spread throughout the mental hospital in the mountains of Massive, with the aim of adjusting the human brain to create a suitable host for the Walrider, synthesis of nanochips with the ability to control the mind, in the years from 1950 to 1970, before the morphogenic system was created. Murkoff's research team carried out more than 1,000 experiments on the human body, with all kinds of the most barbaric and anamorphic torture. Their purpose is to stimulate the host's brain to constantly be in a lucid dream state, aka dream awakening, a kind of dream that you can control. Through lucid dream is the time when your brain is still active but your body still sleeps. Since the Walrider is a collection of thousands of small nanochips, researchers have to find a way to force the brain of the experimental object to work non-stop, thereby increasing the size of enough space to implant the Walrider into the host. As for how to keep the brain in a lucid dream state, the cruel researchers used the most primitive way. Experiments that abuse many other stimulants such as alcohol, drugs, as well as constant physical torture. This in-person study puts the entire host in a state of madness and unusual behavior. At the height of the incident in 1967, several patients escaped and killed 3 scientists, causing the massive Mountain Psychiatric Institute to close, and the Walrider project also halted. More than 20 years after the accident, the experiment continued. This time Murkoff realized brain stimulation by traditional methods was ineffective and dangerous. Therefore, when creating the morphogenic system, they decided to contain research objects in separate incubators, nourishing them through nutritional tubes connected from the outside. This way Murkoff's team can take control, as well as observe 24/7 and to stop possible unfortunate accidents. Morphogenic Engine works by forcing experiments to always direct the eyes onto the big screen, where continuous projection of horror images affects the nervous system. Thus, when the host falls into lucid dream state and the chips are implanted, they can control the Walrider through controlled brain waves. The side effect of this is due to constant immersion in nutritional solution, the host will suffer from symptoms of skin diseases such as sores or mold growth in humans. Of the approximately 300 test hosts, Billy Hope alone was successful. Somehow during the implementation of Morphogenic, his brain was beyond the humanity. Noticing this change, Murkoff's scientists decided to implant nanochips straight into the body instead of the brain, leaving them inside Billy's body. Before the events of the first Outlast, the Walrider is out of Murkoff's control and out of the body of Billy Hope. From this point on they began the massacre with all the staff and patients inside the hospital in retaliation. That led to the fact that when the liberal journalist Miles Upshur came to investigate in the main game of Outlast, everything became a true asylum back with Outlast, Whistleblower. With today's perverted villain, that title is probably none more deserving than Eddie Gluskin, or also known as the Groom. Why does he have that nickname? First, Eddie Gluskin was a very odd guy. He had a history of sexual abuse by both his father and uncle. This led to him growing up with psychological as well as gender crisis syndrome, and being admitted to a psychiatric hospital. When the Walrider caused a disaster at the massive mountain research site, Eddie was free, and he immediately embarked on his dream. As a result of sexual abuse from a young age, Gluskin became obsessed with women, so he went hunting for male patients to make them marry him. Despite being mentally ill, in Eddie's subconscious he always wanted to be a true man, but in this disguised psychiatric hospital, where to get women? So his solution is, castrate all the patients so that they become the brides. This process is quite disgusting when described very thoroughly by Red Barrels, causing the male gamers to shiver. Eddie Gluskin has a childhood like hell and morphogenic engine experiments that cause his body to be torn apart, and extremely unstable mentally, thereby turning into a sick killer. Come on, who would sympathy this dude? Compared to Gluskin, the little demon Sachiko seems cute, calm and lovely. Well, on this crazy, sick or disgusting list, they all the same. In general, with the villain roles with depth and context, even if they appear only briefly, the impression that they leave gamers is always really unforgettable. Of course, the above 5 villains are just impressive characters that we can remember now. If you feel there are more potential candidates, please comment. Thank you and see you in the next video.